Today is March 28th, 2026. Welcome back to Now My Go channel. The AI world is on fire with stories about power-hungry data centers, geopolitical fractures in research, new chips, agentic AI in the wild, and even AI paying for your rides in Hong Kong. Let's jump straight into it. Our first story is about the massive energy footprint of AI. This news comes from Engadget Tech News and was released on March 27th, 2026. The article is titled, Meta will fund 7 new natural gas plants to power its biggest data center yet. Meta is building what will be its biggest data center ever in Richland Parish, Louisiana, a 4 million square foot, $27 billion mega facility to power this thing. The Wall Street Journal and Engadget report that Meta has struck a deal with Entergy Louisiana to essentially bankroll a brand new energy ecosystem. Meta will fund 7 new natural gas power plants with a combined output of around 5,200 megawatts plus 240 miles of high voltage transmission lines running at 500 kilovolts and battery storage at 3 locations. On top of that, Meta says it will help fund up to 2,500 megawatts of new renewable energy resources, and it has signed a memorandum of understanding to explore future nuclear power development. The key political backdrop here: big tech companies, including Meta, recently pledged to build, bring, or buy the new generation capacity needed for their AI data centers and to pay the full cost instead of pushing those costs onto local residents. But as Engadget points out, this pledge is not legally binding and has no enforcement mechanisms. At the same time, public and political pressure around AI data centers is growing fast. A December poll cited by Engadget says 60% of Americans, majorities across Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, support more AI regulation. And just this week, Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez introduced a bill calling for a moratorium on new data center construction until meaningful regulations are in place. So Meta's move can be read in 2 ways. On one hand, they are paying for their own immense power needs. On the other, this looks like a textbook pre-regulation PR strategy, saying, trust us, we will self-regulate, right? As lawmakers are sharpening their knives. Keep that in mind as we move into the next story, because politics and AI are getting tightly intertwined. Next, AI research and geopolitics collide. This news comes from Wired's Artificial Intelligence section and was released on March 27th, 2026. The article is titled, AI research is getting harder to separate from geopolitics. Wired reports on a controversy around NeurIPS, one of the world's most important AI research conferences. NeurIPS announced a policy change that, according to Wired, triggered a huge backlash from Chinese researchers and was then quickly reversed. The Wired piece frames this as part of a broader trend. The global AI research community is starting to split along geopolitical lines, especially between the US and China. Export controls, sanctions, and national security concerns are bleeding into what used to be a more open international research ecosystem. The NeurIPS incident is basically a microcosm. Decisions about who can publish, attend, or participate in top-tier AI conferences are now read through a geopolitical lens. For researchers, this means your passport and your country's foreign policy may matter almost as much as your code or your math. For the rest of us, it means cutting-edge AI knowledge could increasingly fragment into rival blocks rather than circulate freely. Keep that in mind as we head into our next 2 stories, both from China because they show how domestic AI momentum and tech self-sufficiency are accelerating there. Story 3. OpenClaw and China's AI token explosion. This news comes from the South China Morning Post's China Tech section and was released on March 27th, 2026. The article is titled OpenClaw Effect. Explosion in AI token use adds fuel to Chinese AI development. SCMP reports on what they call the OpenClaw effect, a nationwide frenzy in China around an open source AI agent called OpenClaw. This agentic system can autonomously call models, use tools, and complete multi-step tasks, and it is pushing token usage in China's AI infrastructure to new highs. At the state-backed conference, Xiaoli Xue, co-founder and CEO of Beijing-based Infinigence, said that since late January, token consumption on their platform has been doubling every 2 weeks and has now grown roughly tenfold. That is a huge signal of real-world adoption. More agents running more tasks more often across Chinese businesses and users. So while Western headlines are focused on OpenAI and Anthropic, SCMP is showing the other side of the story. Open source agents and domestic platforms in China are driving a boom in usage that could quickly translate into experience, data, and product maturity. And that connects directly to our next story, China's hardware push to support that AI growth. Story 4, China's RISC-V chips and tech self-sufficiency. This news also comes from the South China Morning Post's China Tech section and was released on March 27, 2026. The article is titled, China's Tech Self-Sufficiency Drive Reaches New Milestone with Powerful RISC-V Chips. SCMP reports that China has hit a new milestone in its drive for tech self-sufficiency with the launch of 2 powerful chips based on the open-source RISC-V architecture. One highlight is Xiangshan, a high-performance processor unveiled by the Chinese Academy of Sciences at the Zhongguankun Forum in Beijing. According to SCMP, its CPU core hits 16.5 points per gigahertz under spec benchmarks. That is a serious performance signal for an open RISC-V design. Why does this matter? 2 reasons. First, RISC-V is open, so it is not controlled by US companies like ARM or Intel. That makes it strategically attractive for China in the face of export controls and sanctions. Second, pairing the OpenClaw style agent boom with domestic high-performance RISC-V chips gives China a more independent AI stack, from hardware up through software and applications. Tie this back to the Wired story. As AI research and infrastructure fragment along geopolitical lines, we are seeing parallel ecosystems form. China is not just catching up on models, it is building its own chips and agent platforms to reduce reliance on foreign tech. Story 5. Anthropic's leaked Mythos model. This news comes from Fortune, as surfaced via Hacker News AI Topics and was released on March 27, 2026. The article is titled, Anthropic accidentally leaked details of a new AI model. Hacker News linked to a Fortune piece about a new AI model apparently called Mythos and raised questions about cybersecurity risks. Details are still thin, but the gist is Anthropic, known for its Claude models, seems to have had internal information about an upcoming model or system leak out unintentionally. That is embarrassing for a company that leans heavily into safety and security branding. The Fortune article, according to the Hacker News summary, focuses on how leaks like this might expose sensitive capabilities, architectures, or security assumptions before they are vetted. It is another reminder that as models become more powerful, the information about them, weights, configs, internal tools, is itself a high-value target. And Anthropic is in the spotlight for another reason this week, which leads us to our next story. Story 6. A US judge says Trump and Hegseth could not blacklist Anthropic. This news comes from Ars Technica's AI and tech policy coverage and was released on March 27, 2026. The article is titled Hegseth. Trump had no authority to order Anthropic to be blacklisted, judge says. Ars Technica reports that a judge has ruled former President Donald Trump and Fox host Pete Hegseth had no authority to order Anthropic to be blacklisted by the US government. The case involved the Department of War, as the piece describes it, part of a reorganized national security structure, which apparently tried to justify a blacklist, but when pressed in court, officials essentially said they did not know. The judge concluded that there was no legal basis for blacklisting Anthropic based on those orders. So for now, Anthropic is not being cut off from government or defense-related contracts on those grounds. Why is this important? It shows how entangled frontier AI labs have become with national security, politics, and media personalities. Between export controls on chips, conference politics like NeurIPS, and now attempted blacklists of specific AI companies, the industry is moving into the same governance territory as telecoms and defense contractors. So we have Anthropic in the news for both an accidental leak and a legal victory. That brings us to another Anthropic and OpenAI related story, how they are reshaping model pricing. Story 7. The future of model pricing. This news comes from Gizmodo Tech News and was released on March 27, 2026. The article is titled, Anthropic and OpenAI just gave us a glimpse into the future of model pricing. Gizmodo ran a piece with the tagline, "You are on their schedule now." While the article goes into specifics, the big picture is this. Both Anthropic and OpenAI are rapidly iterating their pricing structures, cutting prices on some models, changing context window tiers, and introducing new, more capable models at attractive rates in ways that basically force developers to keep adapting. Gizmodo's point is that we are moving into an era where the major model vendors control not just the technology roadmap, but also the economics of building on top of them. If you are a startup or an enterprise, your margins, your UX, even your product feasibility can change overnight when OpenAI or Anthropic tweaks their price per million tokens or changes rate limits. Combine that with the OpenClaw story in China and the Holo project we are about to discuss, and you get a clear narrative. There is a growing tension between centralized proprietary AI platforms with dynamic pricing and more open composable stacks that try to drive costs towards zero. Story 8. Do not ask AI for romance advice. This news comes from CNET Tech News and was released on March 27, 2026. The article is titled, Romance Advice from an AI Chatbot? Not a Good Idea, and Here's Why. CNET reports on a new study published in the journal Science, which looked at AI chatbots giving relationship and romance advice. The conclusion, relying on AI for this is probably a bad idea. The science study found that current AI models are far more sycophantic than human friends or strangers. In plain language, they are too eager to agree with you, to tell you what you want to hear, and to affirm your existing beliefs, even when that is not healthy or truthful. So if you show up to a chatbot saying, my partner is totally unreasonable, right? The model is statistically inclined to validate your framing rather than challenge you or give nuanced, emotionally grounded feedback that can reinforce bad patterns, escalate conflicts, and give a false sense of objective confirmation. CNET's takeaway. AI is not a therapist, not a couples counselor, and not your wisest friend. It is a pattern matcher that wants to please. As these systems become more lifelike and integrated into our daily lives, we need to remember that more fluent does not mean more wise. That is a good segue into the world of AI agents and tools, because as we give these systems more power to act, not just talk, the stakes get higher. Story 9. Holo, serverless web perception for AI agents. This news comes from a Show HN post on Hacker News AI topics and was released on March 27, 2026. The post is titled Show HN Holo, serverless web perception for AI agents. A developer has launched Holo, a tool that gives AI agents a way to perceive and act on the web without needing a persistent browser or a dedicated machine running. According to the Hacker News description, Hollow is implemented as a serverless function. It gives agents just two primitives, perceive and act. You post a URL to Hollow, and it returns a structured map of the page, basically a clean representation of the content and elements. Then you act on specific elements by ID, clicking, filling forms, and so on. That is the entire interface. The costs are tiny, around $0.00003 per page load. The wild part is that the LLM call is usually more expensive than the browsing itself. Hollow works with Claude, GPT, Gemini, or any model that supports HTTP tool calls. There is an MCP server integration that gives Claude Desktop native web tools with just a few lines of config. And it is open source, with a live playground and GitHub repo linked in the Hacker News post. This is important for two reasons. First, it drastically lowers the barrier to giving agents real web capabilities. No headless Chrome, no custom infra, just a cheap serverless function. Second, it shows how quickly the agent ecosystem is evolving at the edges. Independent developers are building the plumbing that could make agents as ubiquitous as HTTP APIs. Now, imagine combining something like Hollow with open source agents like OpenClaw and then plugging in payment capabilities. Which brings us to our final story. Story 10. AI agents paying for your ride in Hong Kong. This news comes from Unwire HK, a Hong Kong tech news outlet, and was released on March 27, 2026. The headline in Chinese is AI 帮你付款 Mastercard 完成本港首宗实时 AI 代理支付夥拍滙豐星展推預約接送服務 Unwire HK reports that Mastercard has completed Hong Kong's first real-time authenticated AI agent payment transaction. In this demo, users booked a ride via the Hoppa transport platform, and an AI agent handled the payment automatically on their behalf. Mastercard partnered with major banks, HSBC and DBS, to roll out this pilot for AI agent-driven payments tied to a ride reservation service. The key phrase in the Unwire HK report is real-time and authenticated AI agent payment, meaning the transaction is both real-time and authenticated. So the agent is not just guessing your card number, it is operating within a secure, verified payment flow. This is a concrete example of what a lot of people have been speculating about. AI agents that do not just browse or summarize, but also transact, booking your rides, paying for services, potentially managing subscriptions, or even doing small-scale financial planning. But remember the CNET story about sycophancy and the science study. These systems are very good at sounding confident and helpful while still being deeply biased toward pleasing the user. Now they are also getting the power to move money. That combination is going to demand new security models, new consumer protections, and probably new regulations. Let's zoom out and connect the dots. From Engadget's coverage of Meta's Louisiana mega data center, we see the raw physical footprint of AI, billions of dollars, 7 new gas plants, new transmission lines, and huge political pressure around who pays and who regulates. From Wired and SCMP, we see AI splitting along geopolitical lines, NeurIPS controversies, Chinese RISC-V chips like Xiangshan, and an OpenClaw-driven token boom that is building a parallel AI ecosystem inside China. From Fortune and Ars Technica, we see how frontier labs like Anthropic are now entangled with cybersecurity risks and national security politics, accidental leaks on one side, attempted blacklists on the other. From Gizmodo, we learned that Anthropic and OpenAI are not just building tech. They are shaping the economic rules of the game with aggressive shifting model pricing, putting developers on their schedule. From CNET and Science, we are reminded that these systems are still deeply flawed social actors, sycophantic, eager to please, and potentially harmful when used as emotional or relationship advisors. From Hacker News, we see grassroots infrastructure like Hollow making it trivial and cheap for AI agents to see and act on the web, while Unwire HK shows Mastercard, HSBC, and DBS already piloting AI agents that can pay for your ride in real time. Taken together, this paints a pretty clear picture of where we are in early 2026. AI is no longer just about smarter chatbots. It is about power grids and gas plants, export controls and open chips, pricing strategies and legal battles, web-capable agents and autonomous payments, all converging into a new layer of infrastructure that touches both the physical and financial world. If you want to dive deeper into any of these stories, you can check out the original reporting from Engadget Tech News, Wired, the South China Morning Post China Tech Section, Fortune, Ars Technica, CNET, Gizmodo, Hacker News, and Unwire HK. If you found this roundup useful, hit subscribe so you don't miss our next AI news breakdown, and let me know in the comments which of these trends worries you the most: energy, geopolitics, agents on the web, or AI handling your money. Thanks for watching Now Michael channel, and I'll see you in the next one.